What's going on, everybody? Welcome to Brutal Planet Comics. I'm your host, Trey, the Brute Daniels. Welcome to an episode of the Indie Corner, where I sit down with everybody from the independent community, writers, artists, directors, producers. Doesn't matter if you're in the game, I want to talk to you. So today we have ourselves a very special guest. He is the writer and editor of Purple Eyes. Give it up, everybody, for Phillip Maira.
What's up, Andre?
Oh, what is going on, my friend? How are you?
Doing great.
Good. You're looking good too. So I would like to thank you so much for taking the time to jump on with me and talk about all the great work that you guys are doing over there. I just want to thank you ahead of time before we jump into all this great stuff.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for having me.
Oh, absolutely.
I'm excited.
Absolutely. Oh, so let's just jump into a little bit here. Before we get into all the great stuff that you got cooking, let's just get to know you a little bit, Phillip. So who are you? Where you're from? How did we get here?
Right on. The classic comic book origin story. So Phillip Maira, from Chicago, born and raised in the south suburbs. Been here the majority of my life. A few distance travels. But I kind of came a little bit late to comics. I started getting into it in college. So going into my senior year that summer, a buddy of mine had a copy of the first trade of The Walking Dead, and I was at his apartment. And he's like, "Hey, just here you go. I think you'd be interested." So I was thumbing through it, and everything else kind of just like dissipated. Like I kind of was just sat down on the couch, started reading the book, and I just kind of like ignored everything else. And then I got about 3 issues in of that trade, and then we had to go out. We went to whatever street festival was going on that weekend, and that kind of got me like hooked. I was like, oh, this is what I'm interested in. Like I always liked the kind of human condition-esque stories, the dramas, but I always loved the supernatural, like weird things happening. So that's what even the early parts of Walking Dead were. It was more like, how are these people dealing with this trauma, and how are these people dealing with this collapse in the world? From recollection, there's not too many big zombie attacks per se. It might just be in the background, or just the zombie bodies are littering the ground. And I was like, all right, so this is interesting. And from there, I just did the usual thing, Google, best non-superheroes comics. I have nothing against superhero comics, but I was kind of interested more. Similar problem that I was hearing nowadays, of like, specifically with some of the superheroes, like what's a good jumping off point? Like I know that Marvel and DC revamp and do number ones every once in a while. And when I was in college, I was actually not too far away from when New 52 started happening. But I was just like, I know if I start going to the indies section, it's gonna have a clear cut beginning, middle, and end type of thing. So I did, what most people do. I started with the Vertigos, Hellblazer, Preacher, Sandman, and just kind of expand from there. Like I just kept reading, I started following the writers, like Neil and Alan Moore, obviously, the Stranger Dudes. I like Joe Casey's early stuff. Peter Milligan was a big thing with Shade the Changing Man and all the craziness of that series. And, kind of getting back to Sandman, like Lucifer, Mike Carey. So just getting through there, and then I get, then I keep trying to like, all right, well then what else is out there? And then you dive into weirder things like Black Hole by Charles Burns, and you get into some other Fantagraphic type horror-esque books. And you just keep learning, because it's any hobby. Like if you start picking up any hobby, whether it's like either cooking or like woodworking or just comic books, you can just there's so many different there's many different entryways, but there's many different paths for you to branch out to. So yeah, I just kept consuming and just enjoying all the stories that I was reading. And then I just kind of got to a point where I was like, I took writing classes in college. Like my background and like my focus career-wise and the boring old career path is in tech and stuff, as a programmer. So it's not like
gotcha.
I didn't have much of I had creative writing classes, but it wasn't like a high pursuit for me. So I don't know, I just kind of got an itch. I was like, let me I'm spending more of my time, for every 2 hours of reading that I'm doing, it's basically gonna be comics. Like for every 2 hours of reading comics, it's gonna be like maybe 30 minutes of prose, like either short stories or novels.
Interesting.
So I'm like, I keep gravitating to this, and it is, as a fan, but I was like, maybe I'll just try to do a short comic, just do either 3 pages or 5 pages, something manageable. And I always attested to, similar with hobbies. If you're obsessed with baseball and you're in fantasy and, you're just constantly on ESPN and checking all the farm leagues, and even in college, and you're just that obsessed with baseball, you're going to probably want to just see if there's any pickup games or softball leagues within your area. You're going to have that itch to try, almost like try it out or like indulge in it more. It's like that's like the next level of being a hobbyist, is that you then try to participate in the thing that you're obsessed with.
Yeah. And on that note, Phillip,
I'm rambling.
Yeah, it's all good. It's all good. Nobody appreciates a good ramble more than I do. So let me ask you this. So early on, you said you didn't get into comics until you were about into college.
Yeah.
Were you just not exposed to it as a kid, or okay?
Yeah, I never had that older figure that just handed me their old, Spawns or Spider-Mans or anything. I never had that. As much as, that's like when the Sony's movies started coming out, the Spider-Mans and Blade and the X-Men's, when those were starting to get popular. But those were, to me, they just were like, oh, those were just, and growing up with the X-Men cartoons and Spider-Man cartoons, and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle cartoons, those were like, I saw those as, they weren't comics. Like I knew they were their own thing, and their source was comics. But yeah, I never had that older, wiser person in my life that bestowed upon me.
Gotcha.
But yeah.
See, my origin's a little bit different than yours there, Phillip. The moment I came out the womb, I had a Batman comic in my hand. I've told the story 1,000 times. I've said 1,000 more times. Like I was born into this, molded by it. You know what I mean? It's just what I've always done and always been a part of. But to see that you were able to get, as I like to say, indoctrinated into the comic faith later on, that's still pretty cool. So here's my question. You didn't gravitate to the superhero genre. Now, was it simply because you didn't know where to start, or you just didn't really have interest in the superhero aspect of the comic world?
I think it was starting point, because I read, I guess you'd say like limited series, condensed ideas things. Like, being from Vertigo upbringing, I would read Grant Morrison. And so obviously I went into Arkham Asylum, and then from there I branched out. I read, I'm going to brain fart who did it. Tim Sale, was it Chris Loeb, whoever did the Long Halloween. Like I read some of the limited series, because I knew that there was enough in there. And if naturally it was part of a continuing story and like characters pop up, I'm willing to do the work and be like, all right, well, this is just a new character I just never heard about or seen in any other media at that point. But that wasn't a deterrent. But like for me to go and be a new Wednesday Warrior for either Marvel or DC, for me at that time, I just thought, there was too much back matter that I would need to know. But also it was just kind of easier for me just to go and pick up like nowadays, I think maybe it's just how I trained myself is like, I'm just going to go pick up a trade. And usually that trade is self-contained or it's split between 2 or 3 books.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's just, for me, that's good. I really don't, hot confession, I don't really have too many stuff on my pull list. I still have a pull list. And I support all my indie friends to make sure that their sales numbers are good for the single issues. But yeah, I really don't have any month-to-month reading long narrative. Like I pick up Monstrous, but like I haven't really read that. I just keep picking it up.
Got you. No, and your confession is warranted. Here, it's warranted. But that's fine, man. But no, we all get our journey in different ways. Like I've talked to so many different other folks of the independent comic genre. Some were professional like journalists that end up getting into it, that knew nothing about comics, but then saw there was a creative medium, got into it. Some were singers, some were songwriters. Like there's so many different avenues, and then next you know you wind up in indie comics. You're sitting there talking to me. I'm like what in the world? How'd you get here? And so but your journey is really cool, man. So how did we go from, you were alluding to it a little bit, how did we go from, hey, I'm starting to be a fan of like Walking Dead and all these other different non-heroic comics, how did we go from that to actually producing your own?
Yeah, like I said, I just thought I made an attempt at a script. And so I thought, start small, like whenever, coming with the analytical mind, coming from, kind of programmer background. So I was Googling like crazy how to write a comic script, and then, realized there is no set format, which is completely fine. Mm-hmm. But there are key things that you can put in, make things more standardized, but also just kind of learning that, all right, so this is the structure of how a comic's made. You have a writer usually does the script, and the script needs to have enough information to pass on the meaning and ideas to the artists, and the artists, either whether it be line artists / inkers, plus the colorist and the letterer, and all that information needs to be relayed there. And just this, if you get to minute details of like the artists, don't be messing around, don't be adding a whole bunch of words, because then that's going to cover art. And, the artist will then have to just make everything super zoomed out because you want so many words. But it's just like all these
nuances.
Yeah. And I've just been, being, being when I started, which wasn't that long ago, it was within the last 5 years, between that and what I'll talk about more about, like how I like initially started finding artists, is I feel super lucky. Like if I started pursuing this like a decade and a half ago, like I would be locked in by proximity. Like I'd have to go to my local comic shop and ask, like, hey, do you know any artists? Do you have any comic books with scripts in the back? Because that's, those were few and far between, but they still were, in the back of some, trades. And that would be more of a hunt for learning to learn all those skills and how to communicate and all the other things. When, the generation before me, the stuff that I was reading, all those creators went through that struggle, and now they've passed it on. And so I had a good source and a good list of sources, professional scripts to look at, but indie people scripts. And I had just like the idea of a woman, a young mother, who goes to visit her family on Christmas Eve, and like her father asks, like, where's your husband? And she says, I don't know. And so I played around I used that premise as a jumping off point. I just kind of wrote it. It took me about 2.5 months to write, and I ended up getting a 5-page script. And around that time was Inktober, when that was more of a thing. And, I was able to change my my searches on Instagram and Twitter to say, like, give me anyone with this hashtag, but give me anyone with the word comics in their profile. So that way, even though people are putting, single illustrations in, even, sketches, I can see, and, I can look at people's portfolios and like bounce around between profiles. So it was extremely helpful. And that's actually something I still do to this day. I always check the Visible Women hashtag and the Portfolio Day hashtag, whether those things are currently active. I'll still look at everyone's post from months back and use the similar search criteria, because, that's one of the things that, you always shout into the void and use these hashtags and try to like get your name out there.
Yep.
And, most people just, share that day and like repost that day or like retweet. But like, it's the internet. Thing lives forever. You can go and search and look at the backlogs.
Yep. It goes nowhere. But that's interesting. It's interesting the way you created this origin story for yourself. I think that's really cool, man.
I'm not the villain in the story. This is the hero.
So speaking of which, Phillip, let's talk a little bit about this beautiful work you're putting together here, the Purple Eyes. So to my knowledge, I understand that this is an anthology series, but give me a little background, give me a little origin on what this is, how we got here with it, what are we cooking up here?
Right on. So the premise of this new anthology is that 73 minutes before you die, your eyes turn like a vibrant purple, and there's absolutely nothing you can do to stop it. There's no medical advice or alleviation. There's no choices you can make. It's 100% accurate, and it occurs for all humans. And this was a premise that is an expansion of a story that Sean Dicker and Justin Birch and I did, of a short story that we did for one of my previous anthologies. So that story in itself is complete, self-contained, and it wraps up good. But the premise was lingering in my head, and that was, I was kind of at a, crossroads where that was the last story that I completed for that anthology, and I didn't have my next project ahead of me, but just that interesting type of premise, the unique premise type of like almost like a story prompt idea. Which is kind of rare in comics. It's usually like take this IP / public domain idea and maybe mash up with another one, or we're doing all sci-fi, we're doing all Western type of thing. I really haven't seen story prompt type of thing where everyone gets these limited like 2 or 3 different types of limitations, like I said, between the 100% death eyes and 73 minutes, and just run with it. So I was like, all right, well, this is gonna be the next one, and this, I was like, let's have some fun. So I called out open submissions. I had my friends boost. I just tried getting the word out there as much as possible. So I had open submissions for 6 weeks and had 185 pitches, and it was a lot.
That is a lot. Wow.
And I had very limited criteria. Like I said, just I had the original story, so people got a feel for the world. And I was like, just do any genre. I was like, I don't care if it's a musical, like just do it. Just give me your craziest ideas. Just know, like, here's the couple bullet points of what's going on. I had a couple of jumping off bullet points. Like I said, sometimes, since it's 100% accurate, you might get some like Daredevil-esque people that want to go jumping out of a helicopter and go snowboarding and go down this crazy mountain, and their eyes are clear, they're normal, but as they're going down the mountain, they trip and they either maim themselves or they get in some type of spinal injury.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, so they're alive, but they're in a they're in a worse shape.
So let me ask you, Philip.
Yeah.
So what is really intriguing me about it? Okay, I have two questions.
Yeah, go for it.
Okay, one, why 73 minutes specifically? Now, because usually someone will go for a round number or what have you, but the fact that it's 73, why the 73 minutes?
So the 73 was, it was kind of just like there really isn't a fancy thing. It's just like, oh, it's just do 73. I was looking for a very short amount of time. And like as you kind of said, like, I didn't want to do like a round number. Like if something weird kind of happened, it wouldn't be, a single 60 minutes, or it wouldn't be 2 hours. I wanted to do something that was like kind of almost like a hint too of like this weird thing's going on, and people are trying to find any type of logic and reason to it. So they're obviously going to try to figure out how to quantify it first step. But then like the more I kept like looking at it, I'm like, like someone smarter than me or into like numbers can probably tell me like, 7 + 3 is 10, which is, symbolized, and it's a prime number, and it seemed, just kind of, you look at it, I don't know, for me, like it popped in my head, but like the more I keep seeing it on paper, I'm like, oh, that seems a lot more, for me, I can remember it easily, but like, I don't know. It kind of seems like a distinct number.
Okay, and it is very distinct. That's why I was curious. So I was like, man, that's odd. I'm like it's 70. I'm like no 2s, no 4s, no 0s. I'm like 3. I'm like okay, cool. Cool. That's excellent, and I think that's very unique. Like I said, it sticks in my mind because it was unique. So I like that. My other question is, it's still in the whole ballpark of the 73 minutes. When you don't have to get into too many spoilers here, just for quantification. But when the purple eye event happens, are you trying to tell a story of you're fated to die in 73 minutes, or is this your body is shutting down in 73 minutes? You see what I'm saying? Like how are you kind of morphing that in your universe, and how does it work?
Yeah, it's supposed to be the point of death. And that's actually something that no one's asked me, like, what is that? Is that like, because the brain has activity post when the body stops functioning. But at least in this world, one of my big influences and like favorite media is the Leftovers TV show. And that was something that explored a similar type of, I guess you can say catastrophe. There's something occurred, and so a lot of 2% of the population globally disappeared at the exact same time all across the world. And some people took it as the rapture, and some people were just taking it as a scientific type of like perspective, and see people like even like they were going on through. It was a shorter TV show. It was only, I think, 18 episodes total. But like they were like even going through like insurance agencies trying to figure out how to like, do life insurance. Like, will this happen again? And like things like just think of that scope. So that's what I was interested about exploring this way of like this. For me, this like all the stories within this occur within 5 to 10 years of the quote unquote first incident of purple eyes, and we haven't told that story, the origin story, but we try to, there's different people have their perspectives. Like, is it, depending on whatever your religion is and your religion's perspective on faith, or not faith, of what am I thinking of?
Like heaven or afterlife?
No, my brain's froze. That everything is predetermined. So
okay. Either
faith. Not faith.
Yeah.
So there's that. I countered. I gave like another example of, some people think it's almost like Freud's collective unconscious, because it's just humans sending each other signals, and this is just a physical manifestation of us sending us sending messages to each other. But then, like I countered that idea because it's, even though, we might be sending each other warning signals, there's things that are not, there's things, natural disasters that are beyond the human scope that definitely cannot have the precision of 73 minutes. Like, you're not going to look at a tornado and your body know when it's going to hit.
Exactly. Yeah.
So there's a lot of playing with that. Okay. But as far as like the stories go, I had those 185 pitches. I budgeted and wanted 12 stories. So there's going to be 18 stories in this book.
Oh boy.
Everyone kind of like fed off of each other. Like, there was just so many brilliant ideas and like amazing artists that I was like, oh, that's an interesting perspective. Like, there's a couple stories of just like, there's a couple love stories, but there's clever ones of revenge. There's 3 revenge stories, and one's a comedy. One's like a petty revenge, basically. And the other one's a puppy rescue story that has a revenge twist in it. And like, there's just so many ideas, like the supernatural ones that are in there. They have their aspect, and there's a medical drama one, which, really grasped me. So Raymond and Shadia and Kyla, they're all doing a medical drama one that's based off of like, what does the Purple Eyes, like what is frontline medical workers, how do they react to all this? And so, at that point, it's an unsaid rule that you don't treat people with purple eyes, because you're just going to get medical lawsuits. Either you yourself are going to be, either overdose their medication or whatnot, or you're just going to get some horrible, you're just going to get some angry relative that says, hey, this person came to you to help them, and you ignored them, so no one wants to take responsibility for purple eyes people. And I just thought that was a very grounded approach. I mean, that's the premise, and it's built into a really good story. But just like thinking all this back and forth of like, how would people interact with this world, and like what decisions would they make? Because that's what I'm more interested in. Like, some of the pitches we got were like, person's a real jerk and just does everything, and then he gets purple eyes. And I was like, the punchline, I was like, yeah, but then what happens? Like, I want to see this person get hit by a bus. Like,
where's his comeuppance? Where is it? Yeah, but I really like your concept, Phillip. I really like the idea, because it's something that can be played with, whether on a scientific scale, a religious scale, any way. Like it could be used as revenge. It could be used as a sorrow, a point of sorrow. It could be used as a point of redemption. Like a lot of stuff can go into that, and I think you got yourself a gold mine in your hands. And the fact that you've opened up this anthology to so many other creators to play around with this idea, I think is actually quite brilliant. So that when this, let me not get ahead of myself. When is this coming out, Phillip? The entire anthology.
I mean, when you're listening to this right now, the Kickstarter is live. The Kickstarter is live until June 15th. I love the Kickstarter comics community. This is my 3rd Kickstarter, my 4th anthology. So I know the processes. The day I was looking at my calendars, my Google Calendar, and the day this Kickstarter ends is 1 year from when I started my first Kickstarter. And so this would be, I'd have 3 successful ones completed within a calendar year, which I think is kind of crazy.
Yeah, that's really good. That's really, really good.
Yeah, I mean, I'm already, I know people worry, but I've already fulfilled those orders like right away. Like I don't have people waiting on me for the 1st and 2nd book. Everyone's has those, even internationally. But yeah, we're just, the goal, I will admit, the goal is kind of high. We're looking for 18 grand, but that's because a vast majority of the money is going to the creators. So one of the key things that I was really focused on that really meant to me was paying a fair page rate. And I'm not going to name names, but there were a few open pitch submissions for either Kickstarters or Indiegogos around this time, and they were very low. They were what I would call predatory, because
I understand that. I've seen that before. Mm-hmm.
I mean, you're asking, especially artists, you're asking artists, you know, even if they're true cartoonists that do all skills, you know, illustrations, colors, and letters, and even storyteller, and you're offering them $50 page rates for, you know, at minimum 10 hours of work, most likely 15, 16 per page of work, and that's unhealthy, and that should not be okay. So one of my key things was giving people a fair page rate, and one of the key things that I always do, like I said, my fourth anthology, is what I like to call like passing the ladder down. So like I keep being very fortunate, having amazing artistic collaborators and friends in the community. But I only get that part. I only get to like where I am because of, you know, people giving me kindness and helping me out and generosity. And so I always try to give back to the community. And so, you know, in my anthology, I always try to have newer creators, you know, either first-time creators or, you know, creators that predominantly do like digital comics, so that they can see their work in print for the first time. And I always pride myself in that. And so this latest anthology has, I think, four creators that this would be like their first big work. It's crazy to think, like, so Sky Bergeron is still in college. I forget which college he's doing, but he's pursuing, you know, sequential arts,
okay,
as you know, as a focus. And he has the most grounded story, and it's someone that's he is the only story I can say that the person dies of natural causes. So, you know, everyone's doing stories of people in their 20s, 30s, and 40s, making mistakes, and, you know, and having parties and stuff, and, like I said, revenge. But he has a very grounded story of someone, like I said, that dies natural causes and has a pen pal, and or a lifelong pen pal. And so that's an aspect of the story. And I forgot to mention this before, but one of the key things about this anthology that is a unique, at least I've never really heard about it, at least in indie comics, is we're the creators are meeting together about once a week to link these stories together.
Oh, that's good.
So characters in, like, the example I would say is like the main character in story 2 is the sibling of like story 7, and so it just fills out the world. So we're coming up with, you know, like different proper nouns, like different, like one of the stories is about him as a music producer. So all the bands that he produces, we're making band shirts and posters throughout the world. You know, we're having settings like the idea is that, you know, in, you know, as far as like relationships, as far as people go, there's like also settings. So, like, for example, like in story 3, there's a weird looking building in the background, and then you get to like story 11, and you see the same weird building, and you're supposed to be like, oh, these things are happening simultaneously, just on the other side of town. So we want to try to do that. It's we would call not Easter eggs, because it's filling the world, and we're not doing it to be like tongue in cheek. We're doing it to, like, we want this to feel like a lived-in world, and with all these stories,
interlinking stories.
Yeah. So we're really proud of that. But because of that, like Sky, you know, kind of full disclosure, like we're looking far into the future. We're looking past the horizon. So we would very much, after this, get in early 2023, get into volume 2. So like if you go to the Kickstarter, it says volume 1, because we really wanted to do a volume 2 and hopefully a volume 3, and then 3 volumes I think be sufficient. But some of the the tangential threads that we can't really, tie them up into nice little bows. So like Sky, like I said, has the story of someone toward the end of their life, of natural causes, having a long time pen pal, and so we're like, all right, well, we got to see this character.
Yeah,
you got to see who he's been writing all these years, and we couldn't do it because everyone's, like I said, like half that person's age. But once we're just kind of just like, take a deep, take a breath and kind of analyze everything. We're like, all right, well, Sky offers, like, I'll just come back and I'll write that character and those two characters' relationships, like how they became longtime pen pals. And that just, I was like, oh, that just made sense, because that way we're connecting the books. So when we're working on volume 2 and we're pre-planning volume 2, that gives incentives for people to go back and read those stories, because, we want to fill this up. We want to make this a world. We're making our own cinematic universe, just cool. Very condensed.
Yeah, that's cool, and I like all of that, Phillip. I think you guys are doing something really, really good. So, so if people miss the Kickstarter, where else can folks get your work at? What website or anything else?
Yeah, I mean, I mostly hang out on Twitter and Instagram. I have my own web store on my website. I've been very fortunate to have very supportive comic shops all across the United States. On my website, I have a list of the shops that carry my books. Right now, it's over 25 shops.
Nice.
Mostly in the Chicago area, but just like, I mean, you don't know. Like, I just contacted, cold emailed a whole bunch of shops. I feel bad, like during the height of the pandemic, and physical places weren't physically open to the public, and they were just, driving around and giving people their subscriptions. And when Diamond actually gave them their books, because Diamond was delayed all that time.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I had a lot of time on my hands, so I just sent emails to people, to comic shops, and yeah, like one of the shops that always shouts me out and hypes up my books is Fanfareland in Kalamazoo, Michigan. Like I wouldn't have thought that. There's another place, Clearwater Books, or Emerald City Books in Clearwater, Florida. Like, just contacting some of these shops, you don't know. Like, you go to their website and you're just like, oh, it's just a comic shop. But then you get more, you build this relationship after 3 previous anthologies. Now this is the 4th anthology. These people around these shops really hype up your books. And the best emails you get is like, hey, we sold out. Can you send me like 5 or 6 more?
There's nothing sweeter than that.
Yeah, because then people are reading them.
Yeah,
Not sitting on the shelf.
Exactly. So, Phillip, I gotta wholeheartedly thank you for taking all the time to come and talk with me and share all your wonderful experience and all the stuff you're doing with Purple Eyes. I'm really, really pleased with the concept that you've come up with, and that the team that you've put together. I'm really, really impressed with all the stuff that you're cooking up. I can't wait to see more things that you're going for, and definitely good luck on that Kickstarter. It's a lofty goal, but you definitely have my support. So everybody, go check out Purple Eyes. Go and check out the Kickstarter. Check out all that great stuff that they're cooking up. I'm gonna leave all the links to all of Phillip's great work in the description section below. Check out his work. As I love to say on this show, he is doing the Lord's work, and it's terrific. So I want to wholeheartedly thank you, Phillip, so very much for taking the time to come and talk with me.
Yeah, this was a blast. I had a great time.
Absolutely, my friend. So everybody, that is Phillip Maira. Also follow him on all those social media platforms. He'd love to hear from you. And of course, you already know who I am. You know who I am. I'm Dre the Brute Daniels. Follow me on all my dope social media platforms. I'll put right under my face, right there. They're not there yet, but they will be. At the Brute00 on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and if I feel like being silly, on TikTok. This has been the Indie Corner. You all have been awesome, and I will catch you all next time. Also, if you want to support my channel, check out spinwiz.com or download the Spinwiz app and check out my comic series, Trouble. It was written with a lot of love and it was definitely my favorite comic series to write. I've also written it in English and in Spanish, so whatever floats your boat, I got it for you. Thanks again, and check it out.